well, Callum. Let's see what else happened. Some big news. So this was a couple days ago. I want to say 2 days ago now. We got to see the PS5 controller for the first time. So this is pretty nuts here for any PS5 physical, news, any actual visual stuff. So we've actually got to see it. So before we get into the details, what is your first impression seeing the controller?
I don't mind it. It's definitely grown on me the more I've looked at it. I'm not sure I like the flatness of the sort of bottom. I've always quite liked the rounded grips of the Dual Shock. It's quite jagged on the hands, a bit like an Xbox controller, or like those sort of third-party PS4 controllers that have been done. It sort of resembles them slightly. It looks very futuristic. I'm not sure about white. It's a bit of a strange color change, just because you've had the PS2, PS3, and PS4 all black, and it just sort of seems like a staple of PlayStation. And I don't like that they've got rid of the colors for X, square, triangle, and circle. So there's a few things that I think that they've sort of lost its identity a little bit with, but no, I think it looks nice. I think it looks futuristic. I think it looks very next gen, which is cool. But it's all about how it feels. So I'm looking forward to getting my hands on one and seeing how it feels.
Yeah, I share the same thoughts. My first initial reaction was kind of like, that's because it's different. It's kind of like, I have to adjust to this. But it's a bummer to not have those colors there. It's such a thing synonymous with PlayStation with me, where I love seeing the sacred symbol colors there on the button. So it's a bummer that that's not there, at least for this launch, controller. You have to imagine for sure there's going to be special edition versions of this controller, different mock-ups, so in the future. So that's what also puts my mind to rest, is I'm going to get eventually a cooler version that's more in line with what I want visually. But it looks like physically the way you'd hold it seems very similar to a DualShock. It's just maybe a bit beefier, especially the side view looks more like a traditional controller. Just when you look at it head on, that two-tone.
Yeah, but I think that's the problem. I think head on, because it sort of seems to drop a little bit lower, and then sort of there's a lot more bit of controller underneath the analogs. But like I said, when you look at it from the side, it does look slightly more rounded, and it sort of comes up sort of towards the triggers, where Xbox controllers are a lot more just fully rounded and don't really have much shape to them, whereas from the side on picture it looks just like a DualShock 4, just with strange colors, and no light bar as well, which I think is a welcome change, and I think the USB-C charging is going to be just so much better, because those cables, just the amount of times they either break or they don't charge anything, or I think that'll be much better.
Nice. Let's get into some of the details here. So I pulled up the article from IGN. Adam Bankhurst writes, PS5's controller, the DualSense, revealed. So that's another thing. It's called now the DualSense, and we'll get into, I guess, what that name is referenced to. So Sony has revealed the DualSense, PlayStation 5's new controller that will bring a sense of touch to PS5 gameplay. Announced on PlayStation blog, the DualSense will keep much of what gamers love about DualShock 4 intact, while also adding new functionality and refining the design. Adaptive triggers have also been incorporated to the L2 and R2 buttons, which will help players feel the tension of your actions, like when drawing a bow to shoot an arrow. The angle of the hand triggers were changed, and some subtle updates were made to the grip. They also gave thoughtful consideration into how to keep a strong battery life for the DualSense, and wanted to ensure the weight of the controller did not get out of hand. The share button is now the create button. DualSense will also have a built-in microphone array that will allow players to easily chat with friends, even for those who don't own a headset. The light bar and touchpad remain, but the position of the light bar was moved to give it an extra pop. Now the light bar sits on either side of the touchpad as opposed to the top of the controller. PS5's DualSense controller retains an audio jack for wired headphones, uses USB-C for charging, and has a rechargeable battery in line with the PS3 and PS4 DualShock. So it's a lot of little adjustments here. It's interesting that with that light bar, so it seems like it's there, it's just moved, and hopefully they've reduced the LEDs on it or whatever light source to where it's if you can't turn it off, it's dramatically lower in power to not drain the battery, because that was a huge drain. That was the main drain on the battery.
My current controller now that I use, I'm pretty sure the batteries you can buy and replace the batteries fairly easily, but it's ridiculous now. It seems to last 2 hours maybe. and I think the light does have a big part to play in that. But hopefully, I mean, again, going back to it being USB-C, you'd imagine that would mean it would charge much quicker as well. But yeah, I don't really like the name DualSense. It's just, and it's more because you always hear. I mean, Sony have always said that every time they make these new controllers, they always end up going back to the Dual Shock. But it seems that they've sort of gone against that, and I just don't know. I do like it, and I don't know if you've seen the mock-up of the PS5 that somebody did after the controller came out.
With the same color scheme?
Yeah, and it looks really like it. I mean, it looks like legitimate. Like it looks really like that could be what it looks like. Obviously, it's a mock-up from somebody else, so it probably won't be. But I mean, it makes both the controller and the console just look amazing. I'll have to try and find it and send it over to you. But
see, that's another side of this, is that we're seeing just a controller. Yeah, once you have to imagine the color scheme carries over to the console, and they pair a certain way when you see them both together. So
yeah, and I imagine when you see it in person, because I think that frontal image is quite unflattering for a controller, because you don't get to see its shape, and because the only thing that you do to the front of the controller is you tap your thumbs on it. It's more the underneath and the sides where you really feel that grip, and like we were saying just then, from the side it looks like a traditional DualShock 4, but it's just from the front it seems to be a bit more flush and a bit more flat.
Yeah, they really should have consulted some like Instagram models, because they're using angles to their advantage with how they take their own pictures. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about angles with social media. So they should have talked to some, like middle school or high school chicks. Like, they always know how to do the right angles with their profile pics. You need to talk to them, because they're the right ones to help you understand what's the right angle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've just sent you that mock-up.
Yep, let me download it over the internet here. Oh yeah, so I'm checking it out now. I really dig that that white and black color scheme. Actually is dope. And then if you have that through line being that the blue LED, which is that same touchpad, or the light around the touchpad now. That's interesting. So the light bar, which is now the little light LED around the touchpad, it does look very similar to the current PS4 little like string of light on the console. So it seems like if they could blend those now together with it being the same one on the controller, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I think that the mock-up sort of makes me sort of more excited to see what it looks like, and I think it definitely makes the controller look nice. And it makes me, when I first saw the controller, I saw it was white, I was immediately like, oh, that's sort of a lot to take in. But then when you see a design like that, that's sort of like, it's kind of like a metallic white, isn't it, on that mock-up console, and I think that I could definitely get used to there being a sort of that lighter color to it, but it's just going to take some getting used to. I don't remember that far back, but I don't know whether when PlayStation 2 came out, I don't know whether the brand was that sort of substantial that people would really care that it went from grey to black. But
yeah, it's interesting, because I guess there wasn't enough of history behind it for fans to react a certain way. With going from PS1 to PS2, it's next gen, so I guess you expected them to change it up with the color scheme, with the box design. But because they kept that kind of color motif going, that's why it's such a different change for us now, that with them going to like a different color scheme. But also losing the color on the sacred symbols is a bit different for us as well, because it's always been there.
That's a big one. Yeah.
I'm hoping we get some kind of like throwback controller, throwback console that has the same color scheme. Yeah, and I say that I'm not sure about the white, but then again, my PlayStation isn't even black anyway. I've got this sort of slim, but it's blue. It was like a special one that came out, and I haven't used a black controller since I got my first PS4 when it came out, and so I suppose I can't really speak. But when you know the main color is black, I suppose that's what you sort of assume. When you think of PS4, I don't think of my blue one, I think of a black one. And I know that a lot of people I know that they did white PS4s and white PS4 Pros, quite a lot of them. So I know that they're quite heavy in circulation. So, I mean, maybe, I suppose the color, I think it's just, I think we were just all expecting something black, if that had come out and it was black, and then further down the line they released a white version of it and it was that, I think it would have had a much better reception. I think it just sort of caught us off guard a little bit,
but no, after a few days to sort of marinate, and I do think it looks quite nice. You know, after sort of looking at it for a while, I sort of noticed that like like just below the sort of triggers, it's sort of like it looks like it's sort of kind of raised like away from the controller. I don't know, but it does look quite smart, and it's made me just really want to see the console now.
Yeah, same here. Now I wonder, with the console, the only kind of stuff we've seen is these leaked like dev kit versions of it. I'm still curious if they're keeping that weird V like vent thing in the middle. I'm wondering if that's carrying over, or if they're going with a plain kind of traditional box. This controller, the way they're switching it up, makes me think that the box will also, if not look like those dev kits, at least kind of change the game a bit there too. If we're not only expecting just a different color scheme, but something different physically on the box as well. I wonder if I just kind of connect those dots just because this controller is so different. I wonder if the actual console will be somewhat different too. Yeah. Compared to other consoles.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it looks. I wish I hadn't seen that mock-up, because I just really want it to look like that.
Yeah, no, it's sleek for sure. That mock-up is really sleek, and that makes the most sense. But also they're changing things up now, so maybe now's the right time to change it there as well.
Yeah. I just want to see. I think I saw something. I think Sony came out and said that we can expect to see the console in the coming months, and it's like, well, we already knew that.
Right.
We knew it was going to be shown. I mean, it's coming out in the coming months. So that I did see that shared a bit on Twitter, but I thought it's not really any news, is it? Because we all knew it was going to be shown in the coming months, but I just want to see it in the coming days instead.
Yeah, they've really been holding all their announcements close to the chest, and I wonder if we're kind of seeing it pay off, because all they do is show the picture or the controller for the first time, and it takes over the internet. Meanwhile, Xbox is has this full centerfold, 3-page spread of all the details. We're letting people take it apart, put it back together, and they go, yeah, that's cool, but we got to see the controller for the PS4 or PS5. I think they're owning the fact that they're slowly releasing information. Yeah,
and I don't know whether it's just because I'm not really involved in the community, but I remember when the Xbox Series X got announced, there was a little bit of people talking about it, and obviously there was a few memes and things, but you imagine that when the PS5 gets announced, it is going to be everywhere, in terms of people talking about it. Whereas the Xbox Series X was announced, there was a big thing about it, you knew when it was announced and everything, but you just sort of feel that even though PlayStation's been getting a lot of heat, they're still the ones to sort of wait on and look what they're doing. The ball's definitely in their court.
Now, some of the things I found interesting with the controller, us seeing it for the first time, there was a lot of speculation with patents that came out, wondering if we're going to see the same kind of stuff unfold in the actual controller. But some things that we heard about didn't really make its way. So one thing was and not really a patent, but there was that PlayStation add-on for the DualShock 4 that added triggers to the back. And it was a Sony licensed thing. And I've along with a lot of people, got the ball rolling where it's like, oh, okay, the PS5 must have these weird triggers default in the PS5, and so this is trying to get them to merge those two generations, but it doesn't seem like it's actually going to be a thing in the DualSense.
It doesn't. I don't think that they'll be there, but the I was just quickly double checking, because I couldn't actually remember what it looked like. I wasn't sure if it was touch. They were like touch buttons or not.
Yeah, the touchpad is there, and I think they referred to it as a touchpad, but I don't think they're focusing on the fact this time around. I think it's just there and it works, and
it's there probably for the backwards compatibility. You'd imagine, but and what was the other? And it's got a microphone.
Yeah. So here's the thing about the microphone. There was a patent a couple of months ago, and we did talk about this where they had a patent for a controller with a mic, and now the side thing that got more attention that we talked about was the fact that there's this digital assistant thing that they're playing around with, where you can talk to your controller and say, hey, PlayStation, find the new DLC for whatever, or beat the boss for whatever. And that was really them testing out this like Siri, Google Assistant kind of thing, or the concept rather, patent wise. And so will we possibly see this in this controller, because it has a mic in there? This mic has like so it's a 3 relay. Let me get the actual term here. So the mic used there's 3 microphones rather in there, and they're used to triangulate and find your voice. So you don't have to like hold it up to your face. You can have it in a normal controller
Yeah.
stance, and it finds your
Yeah.
audio and removes it from the room. So in theory,
Yeah.
like it's not gonna be garbage when you're talking to someone in multiplayer,
Yeah.
and then have the outside audio.
Yeah.
But it also helps
Yeah.
with if they have this kind of digital assistant, you just say, you know, PS4, PS5 on or whatever, and it just works. That
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I imagine that because I remember in the PlayStation blog post about it, they said that if you're planning to like chat for longer, then it's good to have a headset handy. So I'd imagine the microphone is built in mostly for like the Siri thing, because like I said, if it's to remove the voice from background noises, that's more for AI to work with. Because if you're using your phone saying "Hey Google" or whatever, I just set my phone off now. But that because my phone's sort of all the way over there, so I suppose that's being able to take my voice from far and
Right.
use it. Whereas if you're talking to someone, it doesn't really matter if there's background noise, because there's going to be background noise on the headset anyway. So I think I think that they're trying to market the microphone as a way to talk to your friends. But like you said, I think that's more for the sort of voice commands feature.
Yeah. Also interesting enough with the share button, they've changed it to the create button for, I don't know what that actually means, what it means for where they're going with the direction of sharing. It was kind of innovative when they added that feature to the PS4 in the first place, where you could just instantly upload to Twitter, to YouTube, that kind of thing, and stream. So I wonder by rebranding it create, what that means, what that's going to change.
Yeah. I mean, again, I've just pulled the blog up there, and all they've said about that is with Create, we're once again pioneering new ways for players to create epic gameplay content to share with this world or just enjoy for themselves. So I imagine, just thinking of the word create, it brings up, because obviously the console's got a lot more RAM, it's going to be able to do a lot more things at the same time. You'd imagine it'd probably bring up some sort of like editing software straight away, because before you'd press share and you'd have to go into Share Factory and use the really slow PS4 operating system between it. Whereas hopefully this, for people who would use it, is just a way to press it and you can quickly create a clip and then go back to your game or something like that. But yeah, it's interesting. It's made me really excited, and it's just nice to have something to talk about.
Yeah.
With the PS5 that's actually there and you can see it. And, so yeah.
Now, I'm curious too, with that light bar being now just like the LED around the touchpad and not being on the back of it, the whole reason apparently for that light bar in the DualShock 4 was to talk with PSVR and communicate back and forth. So now with it not being such a focus, does that mean anything for VR? They've said they're committed to a new version of VR and continuing in the future. So does that just mean that they've made their system more efficient where it doesn't have to talk to that, or are they actually less focused on it because the controller doesn't have that feature anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably imagine that if PlayStation really are invested in VR, that they'd probably have to do what all the other VR headsets are, and that is include controllers with the finger things, because that's where all the games are heading now. And the price of really decent headsets like the Oculus Rift, so the first one that came out, I mean, you can pick that up for what, like $300-$400 now, so which is still a lot of money, but compared to what it used to be, because now it's been now you've got the Quest, which is completely wireless, and that's a bit more expensive. You've got the Vive, which is still a little bit more expensive, and the Valve Index, which is like ridiculous money. I think it would be more feasible for PlayStation to bring out not just a headset, but controllers that you'd need to have with the headset as well, because then you wouldn't need to have a PlayStation camera. It's just basically taking out one peripheral you need to have with it and replacing it with two that actually make sense to have. Because if it means we don't have to use the controllers, so we have to pick up the camera, but you need to have these controllers instead. I think people would rather have to fork out the money for something that comes with more peripherals than having to worry about then having this little processing box and a camera and all this other crap that you've got to have as well.
Yeah, and I think they've said, I want to say maybe it was the first time they talked to Mark Cerny with that Wired article, just revealing the name and stuff and some of the tech behind it. I want to say they said they had a camera in development that they decided to not go forward with. So, and I think that does tie to what you're talking about, where they've decided, hey, let's think of an actual like separate controller peripheral, or make everything efficient enough where we don't need to rely on the box on a camera, because everything else, you're right, is going that way. The Quest now uses so that one you don't have to have a PC, but you can tether it as well, but also it has like
my little brother's got one, and it's just completely wireless. Like it's just the headset, controllers, and then you can also buy for like $80 a cable, a USB-C like fast transferring cable that you plug into your PC, and then you can use it like a Rift as well. So it's a really like clever piece of kit, and because it's wireless, it's just, I mean, he can play it, you know, in the garden if he wants to, and and he's just got so much room, which for VR is like so important, because sometimes you don't have the room to play. But
although someone peeking over the fence and seeing him just like doing this in the garden, just going, okay,
so hopefully this means that whilst it might mean that PSVR 2 will be a bit pricey, that at least they're gonna not try and sort of have these workarounds so that they make it more accessible. I think if they're gonna go in, they have to go all in. And one, I'm sure we've talked about patents for controllers to do with touching as well. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Hopefully,
like touching on the like a reiteration of the touchpad itself, or what?
It was like I can't remember what it was now, but it looked like VR controls.
Oh sure, there have been
like
various
fingerprint
like
things. Yeah, so hopefully it'll just be a more complete package like that. We don't have to use the DualSense to maneuver on VR. Right. You know, when you put the VR on, you use the VR controls rather than the PS5 controller, which I think would be better anyway, because when I had the PlayStation VR, I didn't bother getting the Move controls or anything, because I don't like them anyway. I think they look pretty horrible. But I just used my controller because I played like Resident Evil, and then if I played like a VR game, you could just use the motion control in your controller, which worked fine enough. But you know, it did restrict me from, just because I'm lazy and couldn't be bothered, or you know, didn't want to spend the money on extra things. Yeah. Whereas if they do it this way, at least they know that their players are getting the best experience from it.
And really, with I want to say the Quest does this. It was like a software update where they will track your hands just from the actual headset itself. So, and it might not be as accurate, but there's a way where you don't even need an actual controller. It's tracking your hands, and you're good to go. So, I mean, there's a lot of options they have there.
I've seen that on the Quest as well, and it says it's in like beta, so and it's not in like every game, but from what I've seen, I mean, where you stand in cause it's got like a little hub bit before you play the game, and you're in like some house with like big windows and like a fireplace, and that's basically where you can like select what game you want to play, and you can turn it on there, and even then you're sort of like looking down at your hands and you move your fingers, and it understands what you're doing, and it's really clever stuff. Nice. So yeah, I think if they were to, you know, just do a PSVR 2 but you still use the DualShock, I think that would be like so outdated compared to what VR's doing now, that maybe the lack of the light bar is a sign that they're, you know, really going all in on the next VR headset. Yeah.
No, it's a crazy time that we actually have some information on the PS5 and the controller, and it's not much, but it's still... It's enough to get the ball rolling, where these minor changes are now making us kind of imagine, you know, what could be for the console.
And speculate what's happening.
That's all we wanted, Sony. We just want to be able to speculate with some actual evidence.
Exactly, something actually real.
So we'll see. I wonder what they plan on, where the time frame is on their end behind the scenes with how they release this, because this controller was just tweeted out on a Tuesday randomly in the morning. So, I mean, we could expect that other big news is just going to be kind of, here you go kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's got to be now. I mean, they've blown it. They can't have their big flashy conference they probably wanted. So it's their own fault for taking bloody ages to show us anything.
Yeah, hopefully they'll get Cerny upstage again with like a cardboard cutouts. and I don't mind him. It was just like the cardboard cutouts are, you know, very weird, and it's got to be something different.
Yeah, he's told us enough. He can go back into hibernation now until, you know, for another 7 years.
Yeah, they unplug him and put him in the office.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Callum. Well,